Marlins, Voodoo. How did they win that series against the Phillies? I have no idea. Somehow the Marlins, though, find a way to win and take that series on the road in Philadelphia. They are now heading into Milwaukee for a 4-game series against the Brewers. Can the Marlins stay hot in Milwaukee and keep the heat up in this wildcard race? This is Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _ UK. If you listen to the pod, hit subscribe. It's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. There is a YouTube channel, of course. Head on over there, hit subscribe. That is also called Locked On Marlins. Hit subscribe. Guys, it is a Monday. It's the 11th of September. The Marlins have just won a series in Philadelphia. I'm speaking quickly because we have a lot to pack into this episode, and I'm delighted to welcome back on a Monday, of course, the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. How are we doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Pete. Good to be back. It feels like forever ago since I was last on, but circumstances occurred that meant we couldn't get together for one reason or another. But yeah, good to join you and talk some Marlins playoff caliber baseball.
No doubt. The boys are absolutely in the mix right now. No doubt. Since we last spoke, they've got hot. They've got hot, which is great. Before we really get into this one, this episode is sponsored by Gametime. You can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right then, Sean, the Marlins somehow find a way to win on the road in Philadelphia. We ended up doing a Spaces, myself and Dave Shaw from UK Phillies. We did this like hour-long Spaces. He hosted it. It was his space. And it ended up just being like all of Marlins Twitter just piling into it. It was a lot of fun. Dave was just like, what's going on here? But, you know, we got into it. We were talking in the fact that the Marlins basically had Yuri Perez going, you know, excited for that one, Johnny Cueto going, and a bullpen game. It's fair to say we were a touch concerned that this series could have gone sideways. I was a touch concerned on Sunday that the series was going to go sideways, to be honest with you. On reflection, mate, how the hell did the Marlins win this series, and how big of a series win could this be when all's said and done at the back end of September and early October?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, every game matters, doesn't it? There's not many games left now.
No.
And the Marlins, like, there are plenty of teams in contention for these wildcard spots. I mean, it's so close, isn't it, with the Phillies literally having just lost. It's 4 games that the Marlins are back from the first wildcard spot, let alone being just that half game out from the third wildcard spot. So there's a lot of teams in it, and it is so close. And you're right, like going into that weekend, it didn't look positive, did it? The lack of arms right now, Shisandi going down, not acquiring someone, losing Pablo, like it's all a cumulative effect to get us now into late September as we are approaching without enough arms to maybe get you over the line. So for the Marlins to really scrape out a win on Sunday in particular, starting with Okur as an opener, he can't even get out the first inning. Shout out Brian Hoeing for really in the ship, coming in and really doing a decent job. So yeah, I mean, Sunday was a strange one. Week 1 NFL, and we've still got a heavy eye on baseball, which normally doesn't happen by the time football turns around.
No.
The baseball season, you know, you're looking at your 90th, 91st, 92nd loss at this point in the year normally. Add in the Rugby World Cup, then the screens were really getting flexed out on Sunday for me. So to see 2 pitches, 2 home runs to begin the game really was knocking the Marlins down to a lesser screen. But
they were relegated on the screens.
They were. But no, it's huge, isn't it? And right now, that's the main thing, that we're in September. We're still thinking about the playoffs. And as an old fan, not in age and duration of being a fan, like this is so much fun for me because this is definitely the rarity.
Yeah, no doubt. This wasn't on the script, But you've already, I was thinking about this already anyway, and you've already mentioned the guy I was thinking about. His name is Pablo Lopez. Had an absolute gem yesterday. I think from memory it was 8 innings and 14 Ks. It could have been 7 innings. Nevertheless, Pablo Lopez is, listen, he's having a career year with the Twins. The question I've got to you right now is, if you could, for September and October, reverse that trade and have Pablito back in and Arraez back as a Twin, would you make it?
God, you really put me on the spot there.
I know. That's what I'm paid to do.
I think with the loss of Soler, like the Marlins need every bat at the moment. So unfortunately, I think it is a case of you'd be damned if you do and damned if you don't. I put that question out, well, not that question, but I merely said, would the Marlins be better if they had Pablo rather than Arraez, with the way that Pablo has been pitching this year? And I solidly got told, no, we're better with Arraez. And I think that's probably true, but I think it is a case of it. That was, at the time, an equal trade. And I think both teams have got an equal amount of quality this year from those two players. So I don't think it would make too much difference in the grand scheme of things if we were to make a swap now, or had they never made the swap.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's impacted both clubs in the way that they wanted it to. We felt this at the time. Like, everyone felt this. It seems that it was just like a win-win trade. Like, they don't happen often with these kind of like big leaguer for big leaguer, stud for stud. But when they do, not that you want Pablo to kind of fall apart or anything. Clearly, no one does. Like, we're all Pablo's biggest fans also. So it's been great to see him. And the interesting part for me has just been the fact that Pablo was actually gone up another level from where he was before with the Marlins. And he had a career year, I'd say, with the Marlins last year for him, particularly in innings, clearly. But he's taken it again to another level, and his game is improved as well. So, yeah, it's been really impressive. Baseball Savant, if you use that tool, go and check out the year-on-year progression of Pablo Lopez from 22 to 23. It is, it's sexy. What I must say, though, just on that, is starting pitching this year, I'd say in general, has regressed backwards. Like, the rules have hurt starting pitching, and a lot of guys have come back. And so for Pablo to step forward significantly in this year as well is even more impressive for me with Pablo Lopez. Sean, we haven't spoken since Sandy's gone down. Sandy's never gone down for the Fish, apart from a brief COVID stint back in the 2020 days, if you remember COVID. And I think one other stint linked to some dodgy armpit hair removal situation. I don't know when that was, but he's never been down with any kind of arm-related issues, nothing like that. When you saw the news, firstly, because I haven't spoke to you about it directly, like, what was your immediate kind of feeling and reaction? And equally, from that perspective, just what kind of a hole is this leaving for the Marlins? I personally think, and I'll just kind of lead it in here, I think that if the Marlins aren't going to make the playoffs, then this will be the moment. This will be the injury, the situation that sinks them overall. But where's your head at with this one now with Sandy in terms of the injury itself, and equally how it's going to impact in the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be huge losing, our ace. He hasn't always pitched like that, but in the second half definitely has looked more like that. My first takeaway was, what a shame for him. If the Marlins were to make the playoffs this year, for him to not be able to pitch in those games in front of fans. Obviously,
yeah, agreed.
Marlins made the playoffs in the COVID year, but there were no fans in the stadium. And yes, I can hear a national media audience laughing at the idea of the Marlins not having any fans in the playoffs anyway. But no, what a shame for him. And you're
Agreed.
right. I mean, the Marlins, for one reason or another, as we just discussed, have struggled with pitching in the second half. Just as Sandy was coming back as well, coming back to form, it was the perfect time, and as Marlins needed him, he was there. So the injury is a huge concern. My concern going forwards is probably higher. Like, if this is anything serious that is going to cost him major time next year, that will really hurt the Marlins. And obviously we're used to injuries now being recoverable quite easy. But I'm always ever so concerned with pitching arms. an injury can change a career just like that. We've seen that in the Marlins in recent history. For me, my hope is, opening day, Sandy's on the bump, and we just move on from this. If it is just these couple of games that we miss, like it's 19 games left now. Like Sandy would have pitched in 2, maybe 3 of those, so that's where it's going to hurt the Marlins. But ultimately, we're at a point in the season where everyone's going to be struggling for innings, for guys. So it's a case of you've just got to go for next man up, and this is players' opportunity to make the playoffs for the first time ever for quite a lot of them. So without Sandy or with Sandy, it doesn't really matter at this point. He's not there. Marlins need to continue to get these wins and continue to go to the playoffs.
Absolutely. I want to carry on this conversation around Sandy, actually, because the question will be is, do we think it's coming back? How does this impact Yuri Perez? How does this impact the rest of the rotation? And fundamentally, not just the rotation, but the bullpen too. So we're going to talk about that, continue that conversation. We'll also talk about Tanner Scott as well, because boy, oh boy, Tanner Scott, yesterday in particular, delivered, I would say, a career outing for him in many ways. Asked to do something I don't think he's ever done before. So really impressive from Tanner Scott. The impact he's having on this Marlins club and bullpen can't be underestimated at this point. But this episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Yes, sir. Let's get the sexy graphics up as well. There we go. Guys, buying tickets to your favorite events, it should not be stressful. It shouldn't. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Don't need to. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. And they have exclusive flash deals on tickets for all the sports, all the comedy, all the theater. They've got it all, and the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You can't say fairer than that. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guarantee. All right, guys, you are here with myself, Peter Pratt, and the UK GOAT, Sean Barrett. On Monday's episode, this is coming pre-game before the Marlins kick off this Brewers series. However, we are still looking backwards here on the impact that Sandy Alcantara's injury is going to have on the Marlins the rest of this year, the rotation itself, and the bullpen. Because this, again, was another hot topic, Sean, when we were thinking about Sandy. Not only is he missing in those starts, those every 5 days situation, but equally, it's the stress or the stress he takes away from the pen. When you've got Sandy going 7-8, and you've got Yuri Perez on a 90-pitch, pitch count, and you've got Cueto that can't get through 5, and you've got Eddie Cabrera that often can't get through 5. Luzardo, luckily, is back. This impacts every single day in the rotation. It impacts every single game right now. Because Sandy not being there means there's an extra 2 or 3 innings of bullpen work, at least for every start. And for me, that's the big concern here. Is just all of a sudden, it's just this bullpen going to just be asked to do too much and it all fall apart. I don't know. Where's your head at with this one?
Yeah, I mean, that's always been sort of Sandy's remit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a case of the bullpen's been blown apart. We need you to go 7, 8, 9.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so weird. I remember coming on talking with you so often last year about the idea of Sandy was told, like, we don't know he was told, but essentially it was a case of like, if Sandy can go 9 today, that would be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we don't live in a perfect world. And then Sandy would pitch 9 innings anyway. It was so weird how often he would do that. And you're right, the rotation right now is weak in the sense of innings. Yeah, I mean, Uri's going to go 5. We know that. He's got 3 more starts, 5 innings apiece, finishes the year at 135.
Yeah,
that's kind of been the plan, or the plan they made when they.
It's been evolving. This plan.
It's been evolving, and then obviously, if the Marlins do make the playoffs, then you're going to be tacking on another game for the wild card series for Uri. So that's another 5 innings, and it's risky, but look, it's the playoffs, and that's where you're more acclimatized to making those risks. But Luzardo pitched 100 innings last year. Is at 150 already this year. Like, they're struggling. You're right with Cueto. Like, it's not a case of his arm can't throw 5. It's that you can't justify the runs he'll give up in those 5 innings.
No.
So yeah, right now it's a bit of a struggle, but again, it is a situation where this is what the Marlins have, and this is what we as fans are going to have to endure for the last couple of games. But yeah, it is what it is. It is a case of Marlins are in playoff contention, and is it perfect? No, but I'd rather they were there than not.
If they go into the wild card series, let's say they get there, and Sandy isn't available still for the wild card series, and you need 3 starters, let's say, because it goes 3 games, and then the next series it will definitely go 3 games. So, who would be your 1, 2, 3 right now if you had to make that decision? I assume it would be Luzardo Ball in game 1, Yuri Perez in game 2, and Braxton Garrett in game 3. Would that be the 1, 2, 3?
That's the 1, 2, 3, isn't it? Isn't that crazy? Isn't that really absolutely crazy?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the way to do it. I mean, can you imagine Garrett playing in a decision-making playoff series game, having been the long man coming into the season? What a story that would be.
Yeah, it would.
But yeah, no, that's ultimately what it is. Has Eddie got enough time between now and then to put himself in that conversation? Possibly. Has Cueto? Absolutely not.
No. No. If Cueto's starting a playoff game, then something has gone drastically wrong in the next 3 weeks.
It really has.
Really has. What did you make of Eddie Cabrera coming out the pen? Obviously, he's back up with the big club. They went with the most unconventional opener situation where they went with 3 relievers to open up for Eddie Cabrera, and then actually came out of the pen, and he looked good. He looked good, really good, I thought, mate. I mean, with this Sandy situation, it felt like they were kind of trending towards maybe a 6-man. Obviously, Sandy's gone down, so you're back to a 5-man. Firstly, what did you make of him? Equally, how do you think they adjust, if they do at all, moving forwards with Eddie Cabrera in terms of just covering innings? And, is it going to be every 5 days?
I think it has to be every 5 days, doesn't it? It is a point of, like, he's got that duration in his arm that it is a case of they're going to have to use him for at least bulk innings. If it's not as a starter, it's behind an opener or 2 or 3. But ultimately, you're going to be wanting to get 4, 5 innings out of him. Hopefully more, but I think ultimately it is a case of if it's not him, who is it? I mean, it's you're using the Hoings and the Castanos and the Sorianos, but the thing is, you're going to need those guys in other games as well, because as we've just said, you've got guys going 4, 5 innings, sometimes 2, 3. If you're talking about Cueto, they're going to be being used already. So I think it's going to be a real challenging job for Skip right now to get 9 innings pitched at least every single night for the next 3 weeks.
Agreed. It's his biggest challenge. The biggest challenge for Skip Schumacher, mate. You've hit the nail on the head, mate. How he can find day after day 9 competitive innings, day after day after day, with the options and the arms at his disposal is going to be. I mean, listen, from this point, if the Marlins make the postseason, if they make the wild card, Skip Schumacher, for me, will have earned Manager of the Year, in my opinion, now. Just the way that, like, the year's gone, and particularly then having to deal with Sandy going down, Soler going down, all on the same day, and then finding a way to get it done, the voodoo magic. Yeah, for me, Skip Schumacher will have absolutely earned it, no doubt. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I did want to talk about the offense too. So we'll talk about that after the second out. There's 2 outs today. You can tell it's football season back, and there's eyeballs on everything sports-wise right now. But I did want to talk about the offense. I did want to talk about Luis Arraez. Mentioned Soler going down. Arraez, the byproduct of this seems that Arraez is sliding in and playing a lot more first base than he has because they want to get Xavier Edwards in at second base, seemingly. Josh Bell sliding into the DH spot. So I wanted to kind of get into that with Sean, actually, and work out the whys and is that the right approach, etc., etc. We also have to talk about Brian De La Cruz because, boy, oh boy, Brian De La Cruz delivered a stunning blast in yesterday's game. And for me, he is my MVP. So we're going to talk about that as well. Before we do that, though, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at Sleeper. Yes, sir. So we need the Sleeper graphics too, which we have. There we go. They look very similar to the Gametime graphics too, by the way. Anyway, from a Sleeper perspective, the MLB playoffs are around the corner. Yes, they are, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times up your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Acuna, interesting, Betts and Ohtani. Pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win big time. Yes, sir. I mean, listen, if we're looking at today's game, I'm already thinking Josh Bell could be interesting. We're already thinking Brian De La Cruz could be interesting for the home run balls. The Marlins offense has come alive recently, guys. Take the over on these Marlins hitters. Feels like any given day they're hitting multiple home runs. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. Use the promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. All right, final segment here. And the UK goat, Sean Barrett, with myself, Peter Pratt, on Monday, the 11th of September. Sean, I teased it out there in advance of the ad. Luis Arraez has spent quite a bit of time at first base here recently. Obviously, Soler going down again, and we're not quite clear whether he's going to make it back at all this year. Soler going down. Looks like Josh Bell has kind of assumed the DH spot. Arraez sliding into first. Xavier Edwards taking some time at second. They're kind of mixing and matching there. Birdie's taking some time. Obviously, Hampson's getting some starts in there too. I was sitting there and just thinking about Arraez specifically. So what I was thinking about was trying to preserve Arraez. It feels like the dude has been asked to do so much this year, pretty much playing every day. I mean, yesterday I think was his first off day for like 70 games or something. I've been kind of surprised, actually, that the Marlins haven't used the DH spot more for Luis Arraez, who does look, a little bit dinged up. And, getting Josh Bell in there at first base. Like, Arraez's first base defense isn't like otherworldly, like he has to be there with the glove. And so I've been a touch surprised on that, really, and just want to try and keep Arraez so fresh. Like, he's so important to this offense. So for me, really, maybe they could and should be prioritizing Arraez in the DH spot and Bell at first base. So what's been your take on it? And equally, just on Xavier Edwards too, early impressions with him in the first kind of couple of games back.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Luis Arraez goes, I mean, it is a case of, I think it's probably for him, keeping him on the field in the game. It's not something that he's used to doing. Josh Bell is a first base DH kind of bigger guy late in the season. Maybe he needs a little bit of time to sort of take a rest as well. So for Arraez, I think for me, the biggest issue is if he can physically play first base without too much hassle. Obviously, it's completely different to playing up the middle for sure. This for him is like DH'ing almost because he's used to playing in the middle infield. But yeah, I mean, it would be nice to say let's give Luis Arraez a day off from the field, but. Maybe he likes to prefer to keep his eye in, keeps the game flowing. I think sometimes when non-traditional DH players, as they get older, have to transition to the DH role, they struggle with the sort of complexities of just you're basically pinch hitting 4 times a game, and the rest of the time you're sat in the dugout. So maybe it is just a case of let's keep his eye in, let's keep him in the game. I think if there were an issue where the fatigue was getting so much or the pain was getting so much that they would end up having to DH him a couple of times a week because, you need his bat in the lineup. Even though he's not been as hot in the first half as he was never going to be. But even so, he's still one of the better bats in this lineup and he should be, it's penciled into that lineup every single day, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. We kind of glossed over Tanner Scott. It's right for me to come back and talk about Tanner Scott before we run out of time here. So we will. Tanner Scott in the 9th inning. It's fair to say there were a few people that weren't overly excited about that situation, primarily because he was performing so effectively. And there was just some nervousness, I would say, about flexing the role. Kind of the Bassman situation of like, he's amazing in the 7th, just let him roll. Don't mess around with it, because then the 9th would come and he'd blow up. That being said, Tanner Scott, and this is primarily driven by the fact that David Robertson just completely blew up and just lost his way very quickly, seemingly. So Tanner Scott, it was necessary to move him into the 9th. He's been the best performing reliever. Makes sense to give him a try again in the 9th inning. Are you at a stage now where you trust Tanner Scott in the 9th inning, or even the 8th inning and going into the 9th, which he did yesterday? Had to get 5 outs. It was a 5-out save yesterday for Tanner Scott. Just give me your trust levels here on Scott as the new Marlins closer.
It's funny because when you brought up earlier today when we were talking about coming on, like we were going to talk about Scott, and obviously he's been great. Like we know he's been great of late. We've seen the games, we've seen the performances, but it was only after I sat back and looked at the stats that I've realised just how great he's been.
Yeah.
And so I was going to reel out some boring numbers, but he's for the season for relievers, he's 2nd in WAR, Fangraphs WAR, 2nd in FIP, 4th in strikeouts, 2nd in limiting hard hit percentage. He's 9th in allowing barrels. He's been everything you'd expect and want as a closer. Now let's just go from August onwards. The last 15 games, he's 1st in F-WAR, and he's also given up 0 runs.
Stud.
From the 1st of August until now, he has not given up a run.
Wow. It's the 11th of September, by the way, for those listening and wondering what day it is.
That's crazy. Like, how has that slid under the carpet? No one's picked that up. He's been elite for a month and a half. My trust levels are 100%. I'm now fully expecting him to blow a save tonight.
Because that's just how it always goes. Probably one of Tanner Scott's, there's various highlights and memorable moments this year. One of the most famous will probably be that situation against the Dodgers, right, where they had a runner on 2nd and he just took off, run into 3rd, and Tanner Scott just completely ignored that fact and just threw a strike and struck the dude out to win the game. It was just something you don't see. That was the kind of crazy thing, is most of the time, a guy takes off from 2nd to 3rd or any stolen base, and usually, there'll be a disengagement, a look to try and do something. Tanner Scott just looked around, just went, "You carry on, brother. I'm about to throw a strike here and get us out of here." And he did. It was so impressive. So impressive. So, Tanner Scott really stepping into this role. And the Marlins need him. They need him badly. They've got Nardi that clearly they trust too. David Robertson's gone backwards. David Robertson's kind of like vultured a couple of wins in the last couple of outings too, because he's in like the 6th, 7th inning, and the Marlins have had a couple of comeback wins. Robertson yesterday ended up loading the bases after he got 2 outs. Then there was a bases loaded issue, but he then ends up getting out of it. I think, it was agricultural, let's say, that inning, but to end up getting that out and not fully blowing up at that point, I think it's probably the most meaningful out that we've seen from Robertson, to be honest with you. I think it was against Schwarber. I'm not 100%. I'm doubting myself a touch on that now. I've said it, but it was either Schwarber or Turner that he got with a big out just to end that bases-juiced rally. But even so, it's good to see Robertson kind of coming back. He looked fully engaged in the game, like he was hyped, he was pumped. It was nearly a disaster again, I'm not going to lie, but big out, gets out of it. So if Robertson can re-find himself a touch, like it's been a real slow start to his Marlins career, but like if you can just slot him into the 6th or 7th and, just build from that base, you then got Nardi, you then got Scott, like you trust in those guys still. But for me, it's all about how can the long men deliver the innings. We're going to see this carousel all year now. Pretty much every day, I think there's going to be a carousel. The Marlins are going to have like 10 guys on waivers at some time, because they're just going to bring a guy up. De Jesus, I think, was the last one. He came up, did okay, actually, 4 1/3, I think. But next day, DFA'd. The prior to that, Devin Smeltzer, DFA'd. Like, it's going to be so many guys DFA'd. It's going to be ridiculous. But it's the only way to cover it, right? They just need always need a long man or two. And they're not going to DFA Hoeing and Soriano at this point. Those guys are locked in. So it means they've just got to carousel the other spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is exactly what happened during that COVID 2020 season.
Yeah,
guys were coming up. Skip was saying, not Skip, sorry, Don Mattingly was saying, I'm bringing in guys into the game who I don't even really know their name, which is absolutely amazing.
Crazy.
As far as Robertson goes, yeah, I mean, he's not going to be put into a situation where it's a leverage inning unless things really improve over the next 3 weeks. But the 5th, 6th, 7th inning in games that matter, that are still close within 1, 2, 3 runs, yes, that's where he's going to be putting in. And those are innings where you don't want a mop-up guy. Game's still close. You're still trying to win this game. He's still going to have something to say for the rest of the season as far as where the Marlins finish. And yeah, agricultural is certainly one way of putting that performance. But yeah, ultimately the Marlins won the game in the end. And if that inning hadn't have gone the way it did and he didn't get out of the game, with the game still tied, would the Marlins have won the game? Maybe, maybe not. So yeah, it was a key important inning, and they're the kind of innings that he's going to be in now. Earlier in the game, in a close game, he's still got to do a job. If he's getting lit up in the 5th and 6th inning, how does that make it any different than getting lit up in the 9th? It's still going to end up losing the game for the Marlins. And right now, yeah, the Marlins are going to have to put him in situations where they need to trust him. And yeah, if he doesn't deliver, that could ultimately be certainly a storyline of why the Marlins didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. It's all hands on deck now at this point. Like, there cannot be any passengers. And so it is all hands on deck. There's going to be so many tight games. And just guys need to step up. Like, it's time to step up and deliver at this point. Like, this is kind of why you go and get a Robertson, like, at this point. Like, I know it's been a slow start for him. And, perhaps he didn't want to be in Miami. Perhaps he wanted to be in New York and his family was settled and his home life settled and, et cetera, et cetera. But, let's assume now he's acclimatized now to the situation. He's bought into it. And these are the moments, these next 3 weeks is where you turn to Robertson and, you see value out of him. It's maybe not in the role we anticipated, but it doesn't matter. You've still got to get the outs. You still need the innings. And, Robertson has a role to play. I actually think that, I don't know this for certain, but I just get the gut feel that, like, if all those waiver claims went through as they hoped they would have done, I'm not certain Robertson would have still been with the Marlins if those waiver claims were executed. I think they went for 3 arms. And at that point, that moment in time, like, I'm looking around thinking, okay, who are you DFAing here? I think Robertson could have been one of those guys. So, yeah, for him, it's been up and down, but we need it to be up the rest of the way. Sean, that's been a lot of fun, mate. It's been a lot of fun. It's great to have you back on a Monday. We probably could have gone another 30 minutes, to be honest with you, but we won't. We won't. Otherwise, the superiors here at Locked On will be unhappy with me. But nevertheless, big series against the Brewers. Big series. The Marlins, they've beaten the Dodgers. Oh, hold on, we can go a series before. Swept the Nats, beat the Dodgers, beat the Phillies. Another team that's either in a wild card hunt or leading the division at this point. So this will not be easy for the Marlins. It won't. The Brewers usually look to pitch well and just see what they can do offensively. There'll be a few old friends to see. It's going to be a tough series for the Marlins. But if they play well, they'll keep themselves alive in this hunt, I think. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day, guys. This one is out late. I apologize for that one. But I had a tennis match. I got beaten as well. So with that being said, thanks to the UK coach, Sean Barrett. I look forward to seeing you guys, of course, tomorrow on Tuesday's episode. We'll see you then.